Hey guys, it's Chris and welcome back to another House of the Dragon video. Today we're talking episode 2, The Rogue Prince. We're going to break it down, review it, and talk about some of my favorite scenes as well. Going to try to keep these a little bit shorter, not go scene by scene necessarily, but talk about the major points. But we do open up with a new intro of this episode, so this is really interesting. And it looks to be that this is the model of Valyria, the little miniature, I would say, that Viserys keeps in his chambers. And we see the bloodlines running from Aegon the Conqueror, so this seems to represent the Targaryen bloodline. And we do see that 5 of these are crowned, so it goes through the kings, and it seems they're queens as well. At this point in the story, of course, we have 5 kings up through Viserys, Aegon I, who was the conqueror, his heir Aenys, who became the 2nd king of Westeros, and then, of course, we have Maegor the Cruel coming in and usurping the throne. And then it passed to Jaehaerys I, as we saw in the Great Council of 101 AC, and now, of course, Viserys I. But it does seem to include other members such as Queen Alicent, etc. if you look at the blood and how it flows and shows a family tree. And it's interesting they kept the same music as Game of Thrones as opposed to changing it up a little bit. I thought it would be a little bit different, but that's fine as well. It's very iconic music. When you hear that kick on after the HBO logo goes away, you know what's coming. So really interesting choice. I'm glad they do have an intro that we missed in episode 1. So we open up with more council meetings. We're going to see a lot of council meetings. And we hear some backstory here, a little bit of info dumping here with Ryan Redwine having died apparently in his sleep. So now Harold Westerling is the new Lord Commander of the King's Guard. And of course that opens up a spot, and that goes to Sir Criston Cole as Rhaenyra is talking about send dragon riders to the Stepstones. But they send her off to pick the next King's Guard, and of course she picks Sir Criston Cole. And she did pick him because he actually has battle experience as opposed to just jousting experience or tournament experience. You have to remember we're coming off a reign of about 60 years of peace, so there was no war. So all these knights and stuff really have no experience in actual combat. We continue to get more shots of Alicent in the king's chambers, and of course this is all kept secret from Rhaenyra. This is starting to sow the seeds. As we mentioned last night in the live stream, she is breaking the girl code by going and talking to her father, just hanging out, even if it is innocent. Because in the books there is obviously a mushroom account where this is more than just innocent, but it does seem to be on the show so far. But she's keeping it secret from her best friend as opposed to telling her, and that's what's going to start causing a rift between Rhaenyra and Alicent, which of course is the major plot in this story. Then we have the interesting scene here where Viserys is talking to Rhaenys and Corlys Velaryon, and they talk about the Stepstones and Daemon and how they look weak right now to the realm. And of course he asked him to marry his daughter Laena, which does make sense as the best choice in all political aspects. You're keeping the houses joined as they always have been. You're basically cementing the fact that Corlys will always be your master of ships and provide the royal navy. It's going to keep the bloodlines pure, all that good stuff as well. But Viserys objects because she is only 12 years old. But of course this is supposed to be an uncomfortable scene because this is the kind of thing that took place back in the day in medieval times. But of course it also shows Corlys Velaryon a little bit as well, as he is ambitious and wants to make sure his family's in the proper place. And he's still a little bit pissed off about his wife Rhaenys being passed over, and Laenor, her unborn son at the time, during the Council of 101 AC. And we keep seeing Viserys having all these cuts from the Iron Throne. Obviously this is a little bit of symbolism and foreshadowing. And we see him dip his cut finger in maggots, which is pretty fucking nasty. But one thing I do like about the show is they show how it really was. You're seeing all the behind the scenes stuff. You know, for example, in Game of Thrones, when Robert was king, you just saw him out watching a tournament or going out hunting, but you never saw the behind the scenes stuff because he pretty much didn't take part. You only saw a couple little small council meetings with Ned. So I like that we're seeing like what the king does in his free time to some degree, although I don't think they should overdo it. But of course Otto continues to work on him, sending his daughter out to his room and all that stuff, talking about you have to get remarried. But what I like about Viserys here is he does care about Rhaenyra. He loves her being his daughter obviously, but he actually worries about what she thinks about him taking a new wife. So that leads to a later scene where we see Viserys and Rhaenyra actually sit down and have a conversation. They kind of get back on the same page, and she is delighted to hear that he actually loved his wife, misses her, all that good stuff, and this seems to be the first real conversation they've had, and it kind of gets them back on the same page. Which of course later on is broken down again. There's another wall or a barrier put up between them because he chooses Alicent Hightower to become his wife as opposed to Laena Velaryon, who everybody expected him to choose because it made the most sense politically. And again, this is going to be a very good change from the books, making Alicent a little bit younger and making her and Rhaenyra best friends as opposed to kind of not really knowing each other that well from the books. This is going to make it that much more impactful, everything that happens, and much more of a tragedy. Another short scene I enjoyed was the Rhaenyra-Rhaenys scene. We never get much information in the books, to my knowledge, about their relationship. You just assume they would be fairly close, although they're a lot different in age. but this is a pretty close family up until this point in history. But she goes through the whole spiel that we saw in the teasers as well, where a woman will never sit the Iron Throne. But you see a little bit of the attitude and fire of Rhaenyra. A lot of parallels to Dany here. She's like, when I become queen, I will create a new order. That's essentially what Daenerys Targaryen said in Game of Thrones. But Rhaenys does understand that she has to be queen first, and they'll never let her get to that point. So interesting relationship between those two. And then, of course, Otto calls the small council an emergency meeting. And this is when we hear the rogue prince, Daemon Targaryen, has been sitting on Dragonstone for 6 months. So we did have a 6-month time jump here, obviously. And he wants to get married to Mysaria, and they have a dragon egg. Of course, we saw the dragon keepers come in and say this in High Valyrian. And what's really good about this scene, to kind of make it even worse, is Rhaenyra asked the dragon keeper in High Valyrian which egg did he choose. He chose one of Dreamfire's eggs, specifically the same egg chose for Prince Balon, who of course is the kid who just died last episode right after birth. So that kind of rubs some salt in the wounds of Viserys, and he immediately dispatches Otto Hightower and some men as well to Dragonstone to stop Daemon and retrieve the dragon egg. So I thought that was a really good touch to show the rogue prince side of Daemon Targaryen. Although we know he loves his brother and he just wants to be appreciated, all that good stuff, he still has this bad boy streak, which is why he's called the Rogue Prince in the first place. Then we go to Dragonstone. It's an outstanding sequence here where we have Daemon and Otto standing off, and Otto starts talking shit, and Daemon draws his sword, and so does everyone. It's about to go down. We see Caraxes crawl up, the bloodworm. He knows when his master is in trouble or angry or whatever it is. You can see the blood bond between them. But then out of the clouds comes Rhaenyra and Syrax, and she goes down unauthorized by her father, by the way, and shuts this whole thing down without bloodshed. I thought that was a really good touch. She confronts Daemon straight up in High Valyrian. I love these little touches, as I said in the live stream last night. The little touches of these scenes where they speak High Valyrian is really, really well done. And they can essentially have this conversation and Otto not know what the hell they're saying. And she takes care of the whole thing, kind of proving that she can take care of things as queen, as leader, without bloodshed. She's not afraid to confront her uncle, and she does get the egg back from her uncle Daemon without spilling a drop of blood, and kind of outdid Otto Hightower, which I love. Then we had a nice little shot here of Daemon walking back into Dragonstone following Lady Misery, and it turns out he lied about the whole damn thing. He lied about her being pregnant. He lied about going to marry her or whatever. So that's an interesting little turn of events from the books as well. But we do see the room where Stannis used to hang out, where the painted table used to be in Game of Thrones, or I should say will be in the future. So I was always wondering about this since the teasers came out. We saw the painted table that Aegon the Conqueror had built, and this is the room with the balcony where it has the dragon carving on the wall, and we see that behind Mysaria as well. But I thought that was a good little touch here to have them have that conversation in that room that Stannis always occupied as well with Melisandre, etc. So apparently at some point down the road, maybe when Stannis takes over Dragonstone, which is in 200 years or so, that he has the painted table moved to this room. Perhaps he loves the balcony view. We do see another shot here. I think it's important to kind of reiterate what's going on in the decision-making process of Viserys as he's talking to Lionel Strong. And essentially, Lionel Strong does agree that he should marry Laena Velaryon. It only makes sense. It's the perfect match politically, as I mentioned before. It only makes sense in every single aspect except for her age, which, you know, they could wait a couple years, whatever. Now, I think this leaves the audience feeling like this is the better choice. This is the obvious choice here. And of course, we do know that Alicent's going to his room, but again, in the show, they're not making anything, you know, romantic or anything like that. So I think it only makes sense for him to choose that. They kind of did this little scene here to hammer it in that that's who he's going to choose, which makes the scene when he chooses Alicent Hightower all the more shocking. Then, of course, we have the other council meeting, and this is where Alicent is chosen over Laena, and Corlys Velaryon is pissed. I really love Corlys this episode. He had a lot more lines. You can see he's very serious, and he's been petitioning the king to do something about the stepstones, and he keeps ignoring him. But of course, everybody is kind of shocked by this choice here, except of course for Otto Hightower, who is the bastard here. So Corlys gets up and storms off, and of course Rhaenyra, who is very happy for her father and understood what he had to do as king to choose a new wife, and she even nods and smiles towards him as he makes this announcement. Once Viserys said the lady Alicent Hightower, she about broke down and left the room as well. So both Corlys Velaryon and Rhaenyra leaves the room, and of course Sir Criston Cole follows her, being her personal protector of the Kingsguard, and this is going to kick off a whole shitstorm of events that we'll start seeing in episode 3. And then one of my favorite scenes of the whole entire episode is we go to Driftmark, and this is where Corlys actually talks to Daemon Targaryen. And what's really interesting here is in the books you would think Daemon went off to do this on the Stepstones to become king of the Narrow Sea, but as it turns out, at least show-wise, Corlys is the one who actually recruits Daemon. He gives a whole speech about the history of his house and about how they're the second sons and everything they have to earn and take for themselves. And then we have flashes of the current war going on against the pirates, Kragas Drahar the Crab Feeder, and essentially Corlys Velaryon talks Daemon into starting the War for the Stepstones, which we'll see in House of the Dragon, Episode 3. Anyway, guys, another outstanding episode, especially the second half was really good. And again, my favorite scene was between Corlys and Daemon. And again, I just did a video as well on Episode 3, the little teaser breakdown, so you can check that out as well. Let me know what you think in the comments below. As usual, thank you for all the support, especially to you guys on Patreon. And a huge shout out to my executive Patreon SmokeScreen producers. And of course, if you dig what I do here, please give these videos a like, comment, and a share. And do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button so we can get to 100,000 subscribers. And be sure to join us on Sunday nights right after House of the Dragon. We go live at about 10:15 Eastern Standard Time. So hope to see you there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.